You look like, what's that?
Cloudy, that's my other name.
Very good. Okay, I haven't seen my friend George in a long time. Anyway, first want to ask, how many people here know who Barry Jennings is? Better than last year. We'll get to Barry in near the end. He will be seen as the great hero of 9/11 in history. I'm going to basically praise a little bit and then criticize a lot the truth movement and the left for not being effective enough at anti-fascism. And it is very important to be anti-fascist. Fascism, of course, is the dictatorial form of government where corporations and the state are unified into one body and with a mystical leader. And it's certainly a terrible abridgment of civil liberties. There are no civil liberties under fascism. 9/11, of course, has been used to justify the permanent war on terror, imperial ventures, loss of civil liberties. How many people here were aware that AE 9/11 Truth, the largest 9/11 Truth organization, had its primary short video, Solving the Mystery of World Trade Center 7, that YouTube, owned by Google, basically cut out the list of that it was seen by more than 1 million people. So it looks like it's not that popular. They did that just a few months ago. Who here was aware of that?
I want to make a clarification. They deleted it because it was inappropriate or copyright infringement, and had been there. It seemed that it had 1.5 million views. And the link to it, as you know with YouTube, is a kind of a funny set of characters at the end. Now there's thousands of links around the world that were supposed to link to this that now do not link to it anymore. It goes off to
So
this.
you can still see Solving the Mystery of WTC7 by just looking it up. But because of what he just said, they really have hurt the organizing. So, you know, all the leftists who claim to be concerned about suppression of other activists, I mean, the great Eugene Debs quote from almost 100 years ago, you know, most of the left could care less about this suppression. Also, the other effect of 9/11 is the exacerbation of Islamophobia. Now, I don't mind if leftists would have a disagreement about our evidence, the value of that evidence, the logic involved with the evidence. In fact, anybody, regardless of background, if you can have a civil conversation with me about the evidence, you're a hero of mine. Basically, Americans cannot have a civil conversation about this evidence. My complaint with the left is they won't discuss the evidence. And leftists are not supposed to be intellectual cowards, but this is a form of intellectual cowardice. Now, I'm issuing a challenge to the Left Forum, and the Left Forum has been very impressive to me. I mean, the fact that they let us speak last year, the fact that they're allowing 4 workshops this year, I mean, they're really impressive for people on the left who have allowed that. And so I'm not upset with them, but it's still a fair challenge. What is really needed, and they won't be able to serve the left community properly until they're able to organize a debate on this evidence. A plenary debate, that is to say, nothing else happening at the time. Because what will happen is that if it's not a plenary, then all the people who really need to hear the evidence will go somewhere else, and it'll just be quiet, like essentially this workshop. And so the difficulty is finding someone who will debate us. We can't find somebody who will debate us. But I'll bet the Left Forum could find somebody who would debate us. I actually think the best person to debate us would be David Swanson, just because he's so brilliant that it wouldn't take him that long to prepare. And frankly, we would have to guarantee that even if, you know, I mean, I'm 100 times more knowledgeable about 9/11 than he is, although he's a lot smarter than I am. I can't be mean to him because he didn't know this or that. You know, it wouldn't be an exact debate. It would be, you know, I would have to appreciate the fact that he took the risk. I've tried to get David to debate me, and he says it's not worth his time. But he really would be the best person. Anyway, let's see, how many people here do consider themselves leftists? And how many consider themselves truthers? Okay, a little more. Okay. Now, I'm going to appraise both the truth movement and the left. I'm the founder of DC 9/11 Truth in '06. And the first thing I said at the first event we had is, if I live to be 100 and I'm still an activist, nothing will piss them off more than this issue. And I stand by that today. Why are people in power so threatened by this issue? I mean, that's a good question. I mean, you know, Barbara Boxer at one time admitted that, seemingly, that Paul Wellstone was murdered.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you know, if you get to the level of a member of Congress or the Senate, you're not naive. And, I mean, of course, you have McKinney and Weldon, both Democrat and Republican, losing their seats after doing something, you know, for 9/11 Truth. And really, every major institution in the United States stands strongly against asking the hard questions about the central political event of our time, 9/11. And my suggestion is why leaders of every major institution are acting cowardly on this issue is that they look at their own dirty laundry, because everybody has dirty laundry, and they say, gee, if this comes out, maybe my dirty laundry will come out. And they identify more with the people who are profoundly corrupt than they do with decent people. I mean, you know, the grassroots of the left actually is pretty decent on this issue. It's the leadership that is the problem. My praise for the left, I'm not going to do the two full stories. You can go and watch what I said last year, which is similar to what I'm saying this year. You go to YouTube, and you go to Silver Persinger, S-I-L-V-E-R, P-E-R-S-I-N-G-E-R, he's the one who did the taping, and then it's May 31st, 2014, and it has Islamophobia in the title, and so you can check some things, that way I don't have to duplicate everything I said. But 2 times while I was an anti-nuclear power activist, the left showed, people showed incredible integrity, which you would not find in normal mainstream elected officials and such. And I was so honored to be an activist during some difficult times when people who I didn't agree with showed integrity. Now I'm going to let the other shoe drop. Truthers do have integrity, but terrible judgment. I mean, not all of them, but most of them have terrible judgment. I mean, they're fairly new to activism. I mean, I meet people who are 50 and 60 and they've never been an activist before. Well, that's a good thing. I'm glad that they decided they have to be a citizen, you know. But their maturity is, you know, like, I mean, most of the people I know from activism, they got radicalized in college, they've been activists ever since. So that's the political maturity of somebody in their 20s. But I'm glad they're active, and many of them are very, very nice people. And they all have integrity to ask these hard questions. But the judgment is terrible. My main criticism is that generally within the truth movement, people disagree with each other and immediately accuse each other of being police agents. This is absurd. They have no consideration for needs or solidarity. And you don't know what's going on in someone's head. They could be wrong because some other police agent convinced them to say this wrong thing. And hey, if you have, I mean, certainly there are police agents. I mean, the left is aware of that and deals with it much better. But, I mean, they don't necessarily have any given role. They could take one side or the other side. They could be there just to spy. They could be there to move things in a certain direction. I mean, at one time when I was a nuclear activist, I remember thinking that my phone was tapped. I was only in my 20s. And I said, they're tapping my phone? They must have money to burn. They do have money to burn. So, you can't tell who's a police agent by how they're acting either. And you can't tell what's going on in someone's head. The proper way to deal with a situation where you are troubled by somebody is not to accuse them of bad faith. You criticize what they're saying, and you criticize what they're doing, which is the problem anyway. Well, that's why you are disturbed by what they're saying and doing. That's what you should criticize, what you know for sure. Another weakness of the truth movement is they consider that a civil conversation with adversaries is a weakness. You want to avoid anyone you disagree with. How can you have a dialogue with anybody? I mean, you just define somebody off the street who says the wrong thing. Oh, I'm not talking to him. It's absurd. Another weakness of the truth movement is conspiratorial thinking. Now, it's totally bogus to put down people who are so-called conspiracy theorists as misguided, because it really depends on the evidence. If they've got good evidence, then it's worth dealing with. And if they don't have good evidence, it's not. But to immediately assume wild speculation, that is worth criticizing. And that's, you know, they give the truth movement a bad name. And people aren't really as bad as they used to be on this front. But in general, the proper criticism is not of conspiracy theory. It's of conspiratorial thinking. I assert that most truthers, way over 90% of truthers, their main goal is, if they live long enough, they can say, I told you so, to all the people who disrespected them. And that's not terrible, but that shouldn't be your main goal. The main goal should be preventing fascism. But they don't, they don't even think in those terms. I just have to mention Alex Jones, who's a major truth activist, he's a libertarian, and does make a lot of money in what he does because he's a great promoter. He actually, recently, I saw him criticize corporate, the power of corporations. That's not normally something a libertarian will say. So, you know, people need to be, it's really interesting that you have libertarians and leftists and liberals active in the truth movement, and I know of no other grassroots movement that has that combination. And so I really enjoy having friends who are libertarians now. I mean, I disagree with them about this or that, and that's okay. But I think it's wonderful that, you know, we're really concerned about, I mean, this is not an issue of ideology, this is an issue of integrity. Now, I mentioned a lack of respect for collective values, which, of course, a libertarian is not concerned with. There's a movement in the truth movement for unity. That's not the proper term. The movement should be for solidarity. What the people who are calling for unity really want is they want people to stop being nasty to the people they don't agree with about this or that theory. And I totally support that. You should be able to disagree with people who hold this or that theory with respect, and I do, and I always have. But that's not unity. Unity means you do what the leadership says or you get stomped. That's what unity means. Anybody with any background in politics knows that, but most of the people in the truth movement have no background in politics. There's another weakness, which is that, and I saw this particularly in AE now. Of course, most people are not involved in organizations at all. They just do their own organizing. But many team leaders who are wonderful people, who do great work. Their attitude is easier for me to do this than to recruit somebody else to do it. No leftist would do that. That's terrible. That's absurd. But that is very common in the truth movement. Also, a lack of feminist consciousness is amazing. The first 4 people who came into this talk were women. I was so incredible. The truth movement is hugely male-dominated, and I mean, some of the men are very, very nice people, but you have this problem of men calling for knockout punch or put the hammer down. Hey, if you're a minority, you don't get a knockout punch. There is no knockout punch. We're not going to win until we have probably a super majority in this country. I mean, a majority probably is not sufficient. So it's just a lack of common sense there on that one. Now, there are some leftists who are afraid of the government, that they're actually going to get singled out by the government and disappeared or whatever, when the government doesn't do that to people who are a lot more prominent. I mean, my understanding from the JFK assassination is that the people who were in danger were the witnesses. The researchers were not in danger. And, I mean, yes, there could be Indonesia solution, where at some point they become afraid of us and they murder 1 million of us. But they're not going, they might do that. That is possible. But they're not going to pick out somebody who hardly does anything, who just doesn't agree with them, and spend significant monies making their life miserable. That's not going to happen. That's paranoia, and there are paranoid people.
Barry Jennings.
Well, I mean, I raised the issue of Jennings, which I will go on, but I'm talking about people who are afraid to be activists because they don't want the government to even know that they're active. And I assure you, if you've done anything, the government knows.
Just have your taxes audited.
Say it again?
Having your taxes audited.
Well, I've been an activist since 2002 on the 9/11 truth issue, and I have not been audited. So that doesn't mean you won't be. But, I also don't have a pot to piss in, which. But anyway, another problem is, and this is increasingly a problem just the past year, is finger pointing at who did it too early. I mean, you can't deny people the right to research who actually was behind it. I mean, that's what you do in any mystery. Who did it? And, you know, official story's a lie, so who really did it? You have to allow that research, but if you lead with who did it to people who are the uninitiated, they're going to use that as an excuse to not look at the evidence. I mean, when I say to people, I'm talking about the evidence, and the first thing you ask is, well, who did it? I say, well, if you were an old friend, I would answer that question. But because you're a new friend, I'm going to worry that you're not going to remember that I know the difference between evidence and speculation. And you were asking me to speculate. And it took me many years to get to that answer. But that is what I say now when people ask who did it. Another problem is, yes?
Oh, I didn't want to stop you, but...
All right. I mean, if you could write down your questions, it's better, because I might deal with it. Q&A.
Okay.
Most truthers who do outreach don't do it in a coordinated fashion. They just do it. And some of them are very good at it. And I'm glad they do anything. But we do better if we have collective action. And a leftist would understand that. A libertarian would not. Or the average person who has no ideology would not. I mean, the thing is, if you're in a collective, you can, and you actually are willing to listen to your collective, and people in your collective, you can get better at being an activist. What do you think about that? And we need to get better at being activists. Libertarians actually put down outreach to the left. Why are you wasting your time? Well, it's not a waste of time for me because I'm a leftist. If you're a libertarian and you don't want to reach out to leftists, fine, I'm not bothered. I'm not saying you should, it's okay. You should be, I actually got a list from AE911 Truth that was 2 years ago of, I would put in all the terms that might be relevant. I got a list of far right and a list of far left, and about 700 each, and I really looked carefully at them. There are really only about 100 progressive activists, and there are about 200 libertarian or constitutionalist activists. I never really I got thrown out before I was able to reach out to them, but it's you know, people should reach out to the people that they identify with. That's common sense. And another problem with the truth movement, too often people are just so zealous, like, you know, they can't have a conversation. They just need to dump, you know, and that's not how you do organizing. I mean, you know, if you're with your friends who are going to love you no matter what, fine, you can dump. But, you know, if you're trying to do outreach, you have to use good judgment. Now, in defense of the truth movement, of the things I just said, I mean, you know, everybody here knows the statement from Goebbels about, you know, it's easier to have a big lie than lots of little ones. And it makes it hard. It does make it hard. I mean, the CIA came up with their, you know, conspiracy theory moniker back just a few years after JFK was shot. And, you know, it's terrible that the leadership of the left is being influenced that much by the CIA. That's terrible, but that is reality. Although I will say, Noam Chomsky never calls people conspiracy theorists. He knows better. And another reason that people have a hard time doing outreach is they just get tired of being abused. You really can't blame them, you know? I mean, some people are just too shy to do outreach. But, it is impressive that, I mean, if you can get somebody to begin to look at the evidence, it might take a year or two researching on their own before they do anything. That's a good thing. People deserve praise for that. Okay. So now the organizations in the truth movement. First one that tried to do grassroots organizing, 911truth.org. I actually used to organize the monthly conference call for them. And in 2007, I got thrown out because somebody who was new lied about me, and it took me many months before my friend who was the executive director realized the problem. And I actually had to threaten to do a civil disobedience at a truth conference in New Hampshire. And they let me back in. I began to do these calls again. Now, those calls didn't exist for many years, but now James Hufford, Dr. James Hufford of Iowa, longtime truther, he has reconstituted these calls. The reason they're important is that AE911 Truth, which is the main organization, is decidedly narrow. I mean, they won't discuss anything about the plane, Shanksville, Pentagon, minority theories, and because they absolutely won't say anything that they can't prove, and that's good. But people still should be able to talk about all sorts of things, and that's what Harvard provides. Now, as I said, AE911 Truth is the main organization, started in 2006 by Richard Gage, AIA. They now have 2,300 architect and engineer petition signers, vetted and verified, who say the towers came down from controlled demolition. They only discuss the 3 towers. They don't point fingers, and they don't discuss planes, Pentagon, Shanksville. The most important thing for me about AE911 Truth is that they have 20,000 petition signers, not who are including the architects and engineers, but you know, it's like a 9-to-1 ratio. You get 9 people who are not architects and engineers for every architect and engineer who signed. And it takes 5 minutes to fill this out, which is not how the internet normally works. But you write down full contact information as well as your certain opinions and your skills. And those skills, that's huge. That's huge. I mean, I proposed 70 different teams. Oh boy, okay.
You want to get the Barry Jennings and Noam Chomsky.
Okay. We're going to need to wait to the end. Anyway, My criticism of AE is that they're more concerned with control of everything under them than they are about inspiring activism. Richard Cage likes volunteers, so there is hope there, and they have a new person who's doing grassroots organizing, Bill Jacoby, and he has a serious background, and I'm actually allowed to work with them some, so I have some real hope that they're going to get better at outreach. I also need to say that even though I'm unhappy with the board for really having anti-volunteer attitudes, and they don't even have a volunteer team anyway, the board is not police agents. You're just misguided. And the new organization, Wayne Costi, who was on the board of AE 9/11 Truth till less than a year ago, the only engineer on the board, they threw him off, and his group is 9/11truthoutreach.org, and they have a really great attitude toward outreach. They just don't have those 20,000 names. I made 2 suggestions to Richard Gage in Atlanta a couple weeks ago when I saw him that he accepted. One of them is to go to the Civil Engineering Society, not just the Architect Society, try to have a booth there, and also to give the local Atlanta organizers a list of new petition signers every week. See, that's the thing, that is the crucial matter. If AE would give their most trusted organizers a new list of petition signers every week, that would be huge, because you strike with the iron shot when people just sign a petition. That's when they're willing to be volunteers. Most people who sign the petition have no concept that there's anything that can be done other than signing. In general, AE seems to think that if they try to send emails out too much about doing things, it'll hurt their fundraising. But I would say that if they would do more, it would help their fundraising. Now, the left really could help the truth movement by setting good examples, and by they could just support the goals and criticize the poor culture, and have a better common sense about problems of infiltration. Now I'll criticize the left. The only progressive institutions that are pro-truth are Center for Research and Globalization out of Montreal, Professor Michelle Trzaskowski, Information Clearinghouse, which is on the internet, Activist News, and Op-Ed News used to be pro-truth, but I actually talked to those folks, and the reason they had to draw back is that whenever they would even have any discussion of 9/11, they would be so overwhelmed by the influx of emails that they just couldn't afford to handle it, which is very interesting. Now, I'm not going to read the list of pro-truth people, but that is in last year's, YouTube, Silver Persinger, May 31st, 2014. Chomsky. Want to show Chomsky? Okay.
What do you want to say about that?
Well, you're going to show something.
I will.
Okay.